New videos every day.
Life, wisdom. Dr. Belanzi, you are a meat eater, but you have said that you would not touch conventional meats that come from a fast food restaurant or even from the grocery store. Can you explain why that is?
I think the more that I've studied nutrition and studied food, I found that it's probably not safe. There's more potential for harm if you're eating these factory-raised animals. We know for a fact that if the animal had a healthy lifestyle, a grass-fed beef, a cow is an herbivore, supposed to eat grass. Mm-hmm. And when you feed them grain, it changes their protein, it changes their fat makeup, so they become less healthy an animal. And you have to consider all the growth factors that are added because, of course, you want to make more money if you're growing these cattle and they're sold by weight and all of that. Right. And then you've got the antibiotics, and you do have more infections and problems that are spread through these meats. So it's just a situation that if you want to have safe and effective nutrition, then you want to eat a healthier animal. You want to avoid all of those things. On top of that, in the processing of many of these fast foods, if you look, there's been several documentaries done on this, but, hamburgers aren't all meat in a sense. Mm-hmm. They're byproducts and mixes, and there are meat extenders. I don't know of many of the fast food restaurants that actually have healthy beef, even though it may say 100% beef. You really can't be assured what's in there, and they do put almost everything in there. And I don't know if people know this, but they do take and slaughter cattle that just die. It's not like they pull the dead ones away and say, we're not going to use this one. When the cows die because they're sick, they get processed and you get to eat those. So I'd much rather, ideally, I love to go out and see where the cows are raised. Here in Austin, you can actually do that. There's a few grass-fed ranches outside of town, or travel to where you're going to buy your products from. That's probably the best thing. But I like to go out and see the cows smiling and see them eat grass and know mm-hmm. that I'm going to get some benefit that way because of the scientific studies.
Right. So what are some of the health dangers, I guess, that people should know about? Obviously you explained that, the optimal diet of these animals is to be eating in a vegetarian diet. They're not supposed to be eating grains. I think it seems very obvious that if you have a sick, unhealthy animal that's being pumped with antibiotics just to keep it alive, that's not going to be a healthy thing to eat. But how does it affect our health when we eat these animals?
Well, if you've ever been to a feedlot or seen where most of these animals are living, they've never been out in the world, basically. They sit in a small area in their own manure. There's much more chance of infection between them and because of the situation that they live in. And it is true now that we're finding, you've heard all these late reports where there's been stomach bugs and infections because of the factory farming in vegetables and meats. And the process allows the concentration of these superbugs. Mm-hmm. So people are getting sick from consuming salmonella and other things that get into the food, and you've got all that going on. Then you have the growth factors, and then you have the situation with a different type of meat, a different food. So there's so many potential, I would say, risks in consuming those factory foods. And if you have any love of animals, just the way that those animals are taken care of and raised, it's sad to know that chickens, for example, are kept in a way that they can't move around. And you can call them range fed if you just open the windows, basically. And they fracture their legs because of the weight of their breast. Right. They're not healthy. They're just there as a meat source. And I know it's more productive and you can put out more that way. But again, if I'm going to be healthy, I want to eat a healthy animal.
Right. So you mentioned a moment ago that, we are in a fast food situation, or even with any of the processed foods that we find in the grocery store, that largely the meat contained in these foods really isn't 100% meat. And there was the big craze about the pink slime,
right.
The mechanically separated chickens. And, I think that you kind of see something get a huge amount of attention, but then people don't really think about it, because then every time you drive past the fast food restaurant, the line is around the corner. So I think that there's a disconnect between our ability to sit here and listen to something and go, oh, well, it makes sense that you wouldn't want to eat an unhealthy animal. But then, people are still not quite motivated enough to make that switch to eating grass-fed animals, going out, finding the farm, finding a farmer that you can trust, looking for the words grass-fed on the label. What, in terms of maybe tips or guidelines, you mentioned going out to the farm itself, what are other ways that people can know that they're getting a good, healthy source of animal protein?
Well, it's been said by many people that you vote with your wallet. And I think that if you go, I'm a real fan of farmers markets. And again, supporting the farmers that are doing, I think, a better job of putting out healthier food. We've got a lot of people to feed, and I understand the need for perhaps some kind of industrial farming. But again, are we putting out healthy food, or are we creating healthy people? I think the biggest problem is that if you take a poison and you get sick, okay, there's a direct connection there. But if over time you create a chronic disease, people don't really put that together. So they'll tend to eat more sugar than they should. They'll tend to eat animals that are not that healthy. And then at some point they arrive at a chronic disease and they say, well, what happened? I might just have bad genetics. Well, no, it's a mechanism that was created over years. So you have to really assess how you feel now and what you may be progressing toward, and be motivated by that. Because again, people get accommodated things. They think it's just their age or their genes or whatever, when really what it is the poor choices that they made in their diet and the lack of activity.
So you would say that the consumption of these factory farmed animals is contributing to rates of different chronic disease.
There's no question.
And in terms of organic, when we see organic meat products in the grocery store, for instance, would you consider that to be a standard that tells you, okay, this is a safe animal product?
Unfortunately not, because the criteria for organic doesn't necessarily mean I'm eating that healthy animal. It means probably that they weren't fed, hopefully, pesticide-laden foods, that they weren't shot up with antibiotics and such, but they could still be standing in a feedlot. So you have to take a step further and look for something that's grass-fed. And it's difficult because there's a lot of marketing going on, and there's a lot of, I don't want to say deceitful practices, but things are hidden from people. Is it genetically modified? Has it been altered in any way? And that's why, if I can, and I've done it when it's possible, go out and actually talk to the farmer. It's fun to do. It's a nice field trip. And there's nothing like going out, or if you can't do that, at least going to a farmer's market and getting to know the person who's providing your food. Not that you never go to a market, but there's a lot more hidden in the market. Not that, and I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but it takes a little bit of investigation, and it's worth the time.
Yeah, certainly. So we touched a little bit on the animal cruelty factor here, which is that these animals are kept in very confined spaces. Many of them aren't even allowed to see the light of day during the course of their lives. They're just kept inside. I've read that with chickens, for instance, they actually have to de-beak the chickens in order to keep them from pecking each other to death, just because the amount of stress in this environment that they're living in. What is the effect of eating animals that are in a really stressful environment? They're sick, they're stressed out, they're competing, with all these other animals, just trying to survive. What is that effect? There's
actually a lot of effect, because we will get a xenoharmonic effect. There's communication from the animal to us. We know that plants communicate to us chemically, and so do animals. And there are actually several studies on kosher foods where the animals are humanely slaughtered, and you actually get changes in the meat and in the chemicals found in the animal Because if you consume an animal that was highly stressed, standing in line and watching your buddy get electrocuted or whatever, and again, sometimes for volume it has to be done, but if you eat an animal that was stressed, especially at the time of their death, it taints the meat. Any hunter knows that you've got to prepare the animal correctly. You've got to get the blood out, and hopefully there was as little stress as possible when the animal was hunted. But it does make a difference in what you're going to consume in the animal, depending on how the animal was treated, and it's going to make a difference in how it affects your body and your state of health.
Well, thank you so much. This has been very helpful.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining me. I hope that you found this video interesting, and I do hope that you will leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to the Psyche Truth channel so you can see more of our videos. Visit us at thetruthtalks.net. I'm Psyche Truth correspondent Karina Rachel. Thank you so much for watching.